It's sleek, it's red, kind of. It's got a V8 under the hood, and Ford's given it a brand new personality. Of course, I'm talking about the 2015 Mustang GT. I'm Miles Brandman, you're watching FL Detours, and I'm freaking cold in case you couldn't tell, so let's get this show on the road, shall we? So as we always do, we gave you those fast facts, but I'll talk about them again because sometimes it helps to let them sink in. So this is the 2015 Mustang GT. It starts at just under 33 grand for the manual and costs a little bit more than that for the automatic. The automatic's a ZF 6-speed, so it's certainly not bad. It has a 435 horsepower, 5-liter V8. It gets to 60 in 4.5 seconds, not a slouch, and it weighs 3,850 pounds. So not a lightweight either. Fuel economy, 15 city. Oof, not super great, but you're buying a V8 muscle car. If fuel economy is your primary concern, please look elsewhere. So working from the outside in, it retains the muscle car-ness of the aggressive looks and the bold arches and all that, but it does add some curvaceous elements that you can really only find on more European designed cars, which is nice. And it shows that Ford is really thinking global, not just America's sweetheart, heartland kind of stuff. And we aired a FLD spotlight about all the design elements that I really encourage you to check out. We'll put the link somewhere around here. Definitely check that out so you can see all the details from the outside to the inside, because they spent quite a bit of time redesigning this car, and it truly shows. Fun party trick. The Mustang at night will illuminate pictures of Mustangs from the mirrors. So, you're in a parking lot. Which car is mine? Oh yeah, it's the one with steeds surrounding it. So moving to the inside, the cabin is certainly an upgrade from previous generations. It's got retro styling while also adding all the creature comforts that you would kind of expect from a car that in this trim costs $43,000. So there's leather in all the right places. When you look at something that says, oh, that looks like aluminum, it's actually aluminum. Who knew? The soft touch materials are great. The seats feel nice and supportive. For driver and passenger, there's also plenty of space. But if you want to sit in the rear, I sure hope you're a child or child size, no offense, because there's not much in terms of headroom or legroom. The gauges are clear to read. The steering wheel has a nice thick leather. I wish that there were sort of inlets for your hands back here because it just adds a little extra grip, which is nice. I will spend a second talking about the infotainment system. It's the latest generation of Ford's Sync system, and it's definitely improved over previous generations. Now, Ford's done something kind of interesting with this latest update. They've given you a virtual database of information of variable things happening on your car all the time. So you can access under gauge detail a ridiculous amount of data. So your air to fuel ratio as it's happening is adjusting right in front of your eyes. You have boost to vacuum temperature, cylinder head temperature, inlet air, the list goes on. And not just that, but once you get into track apps, then you have things like your line lock features in there, your acceleration timer, like all these kind of features. So if you're either tracking your car or preparing for it, you can have all that information at the ready. On to performance. So for the first time since the 99 to 2004 SVT Cobra, the Mustang has an independent rear suspension. And that certainly plays out in terms of road feel and driving dynamics because the rear end doesn't hop around. It certainly feels light if you're mashing on the throttle, but it doesn't feel really like you're losing any confidence in how the car is going to behave. So let's spend a second talking about the ZF 6-speed automatic. It isn't a Porsche PDK, BMW ZF 8-speed. It's not that instant. I think drivers of this car are more going to be interested in some power when they want it, but not a track toy. For steering, you can adjust from normal comfort, and sport, which does make an impact in terms of the weight of the wheel and your turning input, but nothing super dramatic. In terms of the overall driving modes, there is Sport, Sport Plus, Normal of course, and then Track. Now Track turns off traction control. Your rear end, as I already mentioned, feels light when you mash on the throttle, so when you turn off that traction control completely, you're really taking a gamble. As I already said before though, 435 horsepower is so much that you just don't need to worry about playing around with those driving modes too much if you're just sort of cruising, because anytime you put your foot to the ground, it's gonna haul ass. Wow, 8 miles an hour, not bad. Not bad at all. Unlike cars where they mute the engine noise, this car actually brings it out and you hear it and it's visceral. Pleases your earbuds, you know what I'm saying? And the sweetest spot of the sweet spot that is this engine is honestly anywhere above $4,000. It's just unfreaking real quick. So it's come to that point where I have to at least point out a few things that are less than perfect. First, and probably most frustrating, the driving selection modes. Love that they're toggles. I think that's really cool. But as you're selecting, driving modes, if you've already passed one that was behind you, you have to keep going up until you get back to it. That's like riding an elevator that makes you take every floor above you before you can go down to one below you. It doesn't exactly make sense. Another thing that is less than stellar, the transition between using the paddles and using the normal automatic mode isn't perfect. So you can access the paddles at any time, even in normal driving, which is great. So at any point you can just pop them down and access that performance. But when you're done playing with them, the only way to get out of it is to go into sport, if you aren't already, and then go back into drive. Now, that's not exactly the only way to get out of it, because if you wait for a little while, the system will eventually figure out that you're done messing around with the paddles and will go back into normal automatic. But during that time, you could have wasted a little bit of fuel sitting at a higher rev. Final thing to note, the place around the gear selector and around the e-brake is cheapy plastic. And it just seems misplaced in an otherwise somewhat premium cabin. So that's just small oversight, but for something you touch so often, feels odd. So how do I feel about the 2015 Mustang GT overall? Pretty good. Actually, coming from a non-Mustang fan, I'm quite impressed. I actually haven't liked how the Mustang has looked since the original version. Now that's, maybe a little harsh, but when everyone and their mother literally drove a Mustang, and to my eyes, it didn't really make my heart go pitter-patter or anything like that. But this redesign is not just, some makeup over, butterface. This is a truly well thought out, sculpted vehicle. It's not something they just stamped out and pushed it down the assembly line. This is something they put a lot of R&D into, and it shows in terms of not just the looks, but the driving experience. For $43,000 in this spec that we have here, you get a phenomenal 5-liter V8 engine, pretty spectacular creature comforts, and a well-sorted suspension, refined steering, pretty decent transmission. There's so much to love about it. So when you line this car up against its closest competitors, the Dodge Challenger, the Chevy Camaro, and even now probably the BMW 4 Series, I think this really comes into its own when you're looking at grand touring buyers. There's power, there's refinement on the interior, steering's good, the suspension's well sorted. It just nails it in all those elements and makes it a grand tour for a pretty solid bargain. Well, call me impressed. From its big power to the smooth handling to the refinement on the interior, Ford's done a real number on the new Mustang, and I wouldn't be opposed to a long-term review, if you know what I mean. Long-term. Anyway, I'm Miles Brandman. You've been watching FL Detours, and we'll see you next time, guys. It isn't exactly the most... Sorry.
across me, flipping back in my throat.
So the stupid stoplight and word So when you line this car up against its closest competitors, I mean the Mustang, wow. This is the Mustang, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're driving the Mustang. I just wanted to make sure about that. Just checking, just making sure.
Ow, we're living in the fast lane, baby.